Week number 2 of the NFL season saw a lot of upsets and some terrible performances. So in today's video, let's talk about the top 5 biggest losers of week number 2. So as I mentioned, we are going to be talking about the top 5 biggest losers of week 2. Let's start off by talking about a quick honorable mention, however, and that's going to be the San Francisco 49ers. Now, ultimately, they had a very poor day against the Minnesota Vikings, but I'm not that worried about their long-term future. It just kind of feels like Minnesota has their numbers. And in a week where there were a lot of losers, I just couldn't quite put this Niners team in there when I respect their game a little bit too much. With that said, if you do go on to enjoy today's video, hit the like and subscribe button, but let's hop into the video. And we are going to begin with a bit of a unique one here, and that's going to be every single 2023 top rookie quarterback except for CJ Stroud. In case you guys don't know which ones I'm talking about, I'm discussing Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, and Will Levis. And to be totally honest with you, this is more of like an up to week 2 pick here because these guys haven't looked good thus far through the season in weeks 1 nor week 2. We'll start off with Anthony Richardson, who I think I've seen the best stuff from. It's just been very inconsistent from him. He's going to have a couple really good plays and then a couple horrendous, disgusting, terrible plays. We all saw those week 1 bombs that he threw like 70 yards in the air that were absolutely ridiculous. And then we also all saw the terrible interceptions he had in last week's game. And heading into week 2, I was hoping for a tad bit of a better performance, and I don't think we did get that from Anthony in this game. He is still a very young quarterback, so I'm not hitting the panic button at all for him, but I would like to see a little bit progression from him, at least in the upcoming weeks. Then there's Will Levis, and a lot of those same principles that I said about Anthony Richardson could also be said about Will. The issue for Will is that he can make some astonishing plays here and there, but then he also just makes some incredibly dumb plays that no other quarterback in the NFL would ever make. Similar to Anthony, I'm really not that worried about Will Levis, but unless I start to see this as a consistent trend for the rest of the year, then potentially we can look at replacing Will Levis. But if he can sort of get those dumb plays out of the way, which I do think he will eventually do, then I think he'll be fine and be a decent starting quarterback for that Titans team moving forward. It's just been a little bit ugly right now. I think eventually he'll start to play better though. And then unfortunately, the one that I'm definitely the most worried about is Bryce Young. Now he just got benched as of when I'm making this video. And if you guys watched my week 2 reaction video, which I uploaded yesterday, you guys know that I was calling for them to bench Bryce Young at least for a couple weeks. And they ultimately did so, and I really do think that was the right decision. He needs a bit of a reset here. Let the rest of the team sort of gel and mesh while they're trying to figure out their offensive schemes, and just get Bryce Young off the field, put him on the sideline, put him in the coaching room, just let him chill for a couple of days, grow his confidence back, and we'll see him hopefully in 2 to 3 weeks. With that all said though, I am going to be making a Bryce Young Carolina Panthers video here in the upcoming days, so if you guys do want to see that, make sure you guys keep your eyes open for it. However, coming in at number 4 is going to be the Los Angeles Rams. They are a massive loser for not only losing a game, but getting dominated in this game. They went to the Arizona Cardinals Stadium with a lot of anticipation of a fairly easy win, especially when you took a very good Lions team to overtime last week. But ultimately in this one, they just came out very flat and very poor, and they got basically ran up the score by the first half. By halftime, the score was 24-3, and in a lot of ways, the game was already over. Matthew Stafford continues to look good, but not great like he did back in 2021 when they won that championship. The running back room hasn't been that good. Blake Corum did get some runs in this game, so that's a little bit of some excitement there. And in the receiving room, the number of guys that are continuing to get injured is definitely concerning. Cooper Kupp is going to be gone the next couple weeks, and then you have Puka Nacua, who's also going to be out the next couple weeks. So for the sake of the LA Rams, hopefully some other guys can step up. Maybe Jordan Whittington, who looked really good in the preseason, could get a lot more reps here. When it comes to the defense, giving up 41 points and getting absolutely torched by Marvin Harrison Jr. in the first quarter is completely embarrassing and, in my opinion, unacceptable. I'm not hitting the panic button yet on the LA Rams, but I'm definitely getting concerned. You're 0-2 when you easily could be 1-1 or 2-0 if you just took care of business, but you didn't. You're getting more and more hurt, and things aren't really going that well for you. I guess if there was any sort of good news for Rams fans, is that it is very early in the year. You still have time to regroup and get better, and you're still going to be a good team. Plus, the Niners lost, so you're only 1 game behind from them. So this isn't the end of the world, but it definitely was a bad performance against a team they probably should have beat. But coming in at number 3 is going to be the Miami Dolphins and basically the whole entire organization. This is more about a long-term loser more than just a week 2 loser, because yes, you lost to the Buffalo Bills and that does ultimately suck and it wasn't really all that close even when Tua was playing, but I really only put them in this video because of the long-term implications that this injury could have on this team both this year and for the future of their team. I've already went into detail about all the different directions we might see from this Dolphins team heading into the next couple years, with the possible retirement of Tua in the offseason or in the next couple weeks or who knows when. And whenever you have that sort of week where an injury happens and all of a sudden we're talking about retirement from the guy you just paid millions and millions of dollars to, you're gonna end up on a loser's video regardless. Even if they had won the game somehow, let's say Skylar Thompson came in there and somehow pulled off an upset, I think that you would still consider this team to be a tad bit of a loser, because when you lose your starting quarterback and when you have all these speculations about retirement, it definitely does not bode very well for your team. And for the sake of Miami, I'm very concerned about them because they looked really solid in week 1. They got an easy win against the Jaguars, and then in week 2 it looked really bad for most of the game, and then add insult to injury, you lose your starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. And to be honest with you, this injury comes at a very bad time for the team. You just paid the guy. Next year's quarterback class isn't very strong, and I don't know, when you're trying to compete with the likes of the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bengals, all these great AFC teams, it's going to be very hard to do so without your starting quarterback like Tua. But all in all, I hope that Tua is okay, and I hope that this one ends in a bit of a good story here. I hope Tua can stay healthy the rest of the year and actually does decide to come back to play football, because I think we all want that for the Dolphins and for Tua. With that all said though, let's move on to number 2, which is going to be the Dallas Cowboys, and mainly the Cowboys defense. We'll start off with the offense because I really don't have all that much criticism for them. I thought Dak Prescott looked pretty sharp for most of the day. Yes, he had 2 interceptions, but as I said in my reaction video, one of them wasn't his fault and one of them happened so late in the game that it didn't even matter. My only complaint for this Cowboys offense, and it's been something that I've said the entire offseason, is when you don't get CeeDee Lamb the ball, they really don't have any other playmakers that can actually make plays. I know in theory that Brandon Cooks, at least name value wise, is a good player, and I still think he's a quality player, but he's not the same Brandon Cooks that we've seen for many years. And especially when you don't have your starting tight end in Jake Ferguson, this offense just really lacks playmakers outside of CeeDee Lamb. It also doesn't help that your starting running back is Rico Dowell, Deuce Vaughn, and Ezekiel Elliott. So a lot of the pressure is on this young offensive line to create running lanes for these running backs that aren't any good. And for Dak Prescott, that puts a lot of pressure on his shoulders to produce at a higher level, and I don't know if they're maybe asking a bit too much of him. But really the biggest culprit of their loss to New Orleans was on their defense. And this is for a multitude of reasons. The biggest reason being, this is the exact same issue that this Cowboys team has had for the last 3 to 4 years. I know everyone wants to talk about Dak Prescott on this offense and the fact that they can't get the job done in the playoffs, and I'm not saying that he isn't at blame in any sort of way, but ultimately speaking, it's really hard to win games, especially against good teams, when your defense is consistently giving up 40-point outings to the likes of the San Francisco 49ers, now the Saints, the Cardinals, the Bills, the Packers, all these great teams. And it really just comes down to one very simple concept. It's just the outside run. It's not like these teams are gashing them through the air or anything like that. Hell, Derek Carr only threw the ball like 16 times in this game. But when you can consistently hand the ball off to your running back on these outside zones and he can get 4, 5, 6, 7 yard gains like this nothing, then it's going to open up everything in the offensive game. The RPOs, the play actions, the deep shots, everything is going to open just off of that one simple concept. And this same concept that I'm talking about has been the Achilles heel of this Dallas Cowboys team for not just this game, but for the past 3 to 4 years. Yet despite the game plan being very clear of what Dallas needs to fix, they still haven't been able to get it done. There's a lot more detail that I do want to go into this because I think it's a very interesting case study that we can talk about in another video. So I'll save the rest of the comments that I have for a future video. Again, I'm kind of teasing a future video, but yes, I will be making the Cowboys video here soon. With that said, let's move on to number 1, which is going to be the Baltimore Ravens. Now, you can make the case that the Dallas Cowboys deserve to be number 1 on this list, but ultimately the Cowboys are 1-1 and they lost to a good Saints team, whereas the Ravens are now 0-2 and they lost to a bad Raiders team. And this was even more so of a bad loss because you were up by 10 points in I think the 4th quarter. And this is coming off of a game where you took the Kansas City Chiefs all the way down down to the very last play of the game, and then you lose to a Raiders team that is, in my opinion, not a playoff team. The offensive line continues to be a struggle for this Ravens team. They really weren't able to effectively run the ball, at least consistently. Derrick Henry was better today, but he only ran the ball 18 times. And unfortunately, they really couldn't get Isaiah Likely going in this one, which was extremely unfortunate, especially after how good he looked in week 1. And in a game that felt like they were going to win for most of the day, you ultimately lost. Now, yes, I think that long term, we shouldn't be too worried about this Ravens team, but when you look at the rest of their schedule, it's very tough. And when you have a winnable game such as this Raiders matchup, you have to find a way to win these games. Whenever you're going up against a Gardner Minshew-led team, and I can say that because I'm a Raiders fan, you should beat them ultimately. And while I don't think the Raiders are the worst team in the world, and I do think that this Raiders team is going to beat some teams they probably shouldn't, this is a matchup for the Ravens that you just simply have to win. Because when you look at their upcoming schedule for the next couple weeks, you have the Dallas Cowboys coming to town next week, which won't be an easy game. Then you got the Bills, the Bengals. Later in the season, you have the Buccaneers, the Bengals again, the Browns, and a handful of other good teams like the Houston Texans. And when you have a game that should be easily given to you and you lose it, it's just a really bad look for your team. This is a Ravens team that last year went to the AFC Championship game, and by most accounts, including my own, I thought they were going to be good enough to make it to a Super Bowl. But thus far through 2 weeks, they lose to Kansas City and show off a bunch of their issues, and then they lose to a team that they should clearly beat. And so again, I'm not too worried about them, but this was a bad loss that they should have won. But ultimately speaking, you guys let me know in the comment section below who is the biggest loser of week number 2. And if you guys enjoyed, hit the like and subscribe button, and I love you guys. Peace.